Here's a $10 donation from F. Crone. Welcome back, F. Crone here, and today I discovered something really cool. You can donate and help to fight cancer. Just click on the donation button below the stream. And that's all there is to it. Thanks for reading.
All right.
Okay.
Oh, I heard your voice. Hello.
Hey. Someone knows can count on that.
Okay,
Oh,
okay. All right. 3, 2, 1, go. So welcome everybody. This is Zelda 2, played by ProJan. Going in this cave first to get the magic container. It's important to get this at the start or else you're not going to be able to cast life. You need enough boxes of magic to do that.
Also, we'll be skipping many things in the run, but you have to get all the magic containers to get the Thunder spell, which you need to beat the second last boss.
So right now we're just going to get the trophy. The trophy is the quest requirement to pick up the jump spell in the next town. Oh.
You're meant to have the candle here, which would light up the room and show where the enemies are. We will not be getting the candle in this run.
Can we get a roll call?
Hello, my name is Imzal. ProJan's the runner.
I'm Faisal.
I'm Pres J. Polk.
So this first town here, the objective is to get the jump spell. That trophy that was just picked up in the cave there is the requirement for that. Jump spell is needed to go through the next cave that he's about to go through. And there it is. So the order things are going to be done in this run. First, instead of going to Palace 1, which is probably what they intended for you to do first, the first objective is going to be to get the hammer. So to go all the way through Death Mountain, get the hammer, and then do the things that you need to get the fairy spell before doing any of the palaces. Because the fairy spell lets you go through doors, and that lets you do the palaces much, much faster. So that's the reason for the ordering of things at this stage in the game. Get fairy spell as soon as possible.
This cave was meant to be a filter. You're meant to have the jump spell and the candle, otherwise you're expected to die here.
Right. You have to get the jump spell, there's no way around that, but you definitely don't need the candle once you've played this enough to understand where the enemies are and how they behave.
The enemies...
The gorillas are probably the hardest enemies to fight in the dark of all of what we do here in the early game anyway.
The enemies on the ground are slightly visible. You can see the shadows of their feet on the ground. It would be easy to miss, but it does help.
So ideally we're skipping all of these encounters. Oh, fairy luck. There's little manipulations to try to make it easier to get the skips, but there's still luck involved with whether you can do it or not.
Now we know Bagu.
Right.
So right now we're just going to go into the next town, pick up the life spell. Yes, so mirror the life spell, and then talk to the riverman to cross. So if you've got anything to read over there.
It's a good time for donations.
Yeah, sure. First, let me mention, if you are donating, we have, make sure to get your Zelda 1 file names in by the end of this run, because Zelda 1's coming up next. The current winner is BerryTube with $280. We got a $50 donation from Wolfsauge. My mom beat breast cancer last year, but not all people are so fortunate to survive this torture. Kill the animals and cancer. Thank you.
So the life spell does basically what it says on the tin. You cast it and it refills 3 bars of your health.
Yeah, it's optional. You don't need to get it in this route, but having it allows you to play a little more aggressively, and, you know, this is a deathless category. The idea is you're not supposed to take any deaths, intentional or otherwise, so having the life spell obviously is going to make a big difference.
And in some places it's useful to have Beam Sword, so we're going to see him cast life even when he's only got like a little sliver of life gone in some situations.
And now the appropriately named Death Mountain.
There's a lot of enemies, especially early on, that are very random.
Yep, these slimes, for one thing, are very hard to predict what they're going to do. The slimes, the boomerang guys, and the bats are really hard to predict in the dark.
Those little blue slimes are the most unpredictable random enemies in the game. And the level designers did a very good job of placing them where they could do the most damage.
So here you're about to see an enemy that you shouldn't be able to see in the dark, but all the orange enemies show up despite the fact that it's dark. And we believe that's because the orange enemies are using the same palette as the items, which also happen to be orange, and I guess they wanted those to show up in the dark. And so as a result, the orange enemies are also visible.
So here's an example of that enemy placement. There are those little blue slimes on those floating ledges, and they jump down on top of you, like that.
Right.
Nice dire jump.
Hey, that's good. So that's a random drop. It's a 50-50 chance, roughly, whether you're going to get a red potion, which refills your magic, or you're going to get a 200 experience bag. He's hoping for the 200 bag because that gets him attack level 3 much sooner. Getting attack power is a big priority for leveling up at this stage.
Have to skip a couple levels.
All right. Got a red jar in the dark, so he's saved.
And now Spectacle Rock, which you may remember from the first Zelda game.
Ideally, you have Beam Sword right here, so that you can kind of get rid of these little jumping things more easily. Otherwise, they just kind of
Right. We'll have to deal with them on the way out.
get in the way.
And right there, he had to wait before walking off the screen, because if you don't see the experience start to tally up after you kill an enemy, then the enemy is not considered dead if you leave the screen before that happens.
Then on the return trip, we'll be waiting for you.
Yeah, he'd be right there by the entrance.
Looking for a red jar there.
And there's the hammer. At this point, he will not be taking that point back, because then he would have too much experience. In this category, because we can't take intentional deaths to refill our magic, we have to rely on level ups that are well timed to get our magic refills instead.
So for everyone who played this game as a kid, sorry for not picking up that pea bag. Cool. So we're going to pick up another magic container right here. So once again, we're safe for now. So we duck in and out of these caves just as a manipulation to avoid getting random encounters.
Jumping over that enemy is somewhat of a tricky thing to do. The key to know is the enemies actually read your inputs. It's sort of like looking at your controller in a fighting game. They're looking at what you do and adapting to what you do. So if you let go of the D-pad, they'll freeze in place, and that lets you jump right over them.
Nice.
By getting an encounter on that exact square, it means that we won't get any wandering monsters hitting us all the way to the medicine. Pro Jane discovered that.
we are getting a lot of donations currently. We're receiving all the donations even though we can't read them all out loud. So thank you for continuing your support of AGDQ.
So right here we're picking up the medicine, which you would need to get the fairy spell. We're gonna grab the extra life, right? And yeah, grab the extra life just for safety. We are gonna go to the next town, which we're gonna pick up the fairy spell, the downstab technique, everyone's favorite. So it's as good a time as any for donations.
Sure. Yeah, let me read a few. We got $20 from Sleepy Foo, who says, Link, fill up your hearts so you can shoot your sword with power and defeat cancer. Thank you very much. $15 from Territorial Oak, who says, lost both my aunt and my grandfather to lung cancer. So you can bet I'd like to see it kicked to the curb. Hoping you hit every goal you set. On that note, I actually fell out of playing video games in the past year or so, but watching you guys all doing such great work is making me want to pick up a controller again and finish all the games I never completed. I haven't felt this much hype and excitement for playing games rather than just talking about them in such a long time. Thank you. Let me take a moment to thank one of our sponsors, Something Artistic. SomethingArtistic.net offers decals and stickers made to decorate your consoles, walls, computers, and more. $2 from every decal sold this week is being donated directly to the Prevent Cancer Foundation. You can find all their decals, including some designed just for AGDQ, over at decal.ly.
So the downstab is probably the most overpowered thing in the game.
Very useful.
Very useful. Every time you press the down button when you're in the air, you'll do a little downstab. And so every time you tap the down button, you'll do another attack, and there's no cooldown time. So you can attack as fast as you can mash the down button.
And for speedrunning, the fairy spell is probably the most powerful. Lets you skip keys, and it lets you pick up items without triggering the animation where Link holds up the item and celebrates. So it saves time in two different ways, which is why we altered the entire route just to get the fairy spell as soon as possible. And now after all that, it's time to actually start where you're supposed to go first.
Yeah, time for Palace 1 finally. So inside Palace 1, the idea is we want to get the maximum bonus from the gem. So all levels will be skipped. I think Magic 2 is kind of a backup plan in this case.
Whenever you place the gem at the end of a palace, it will give you enough experience points to get whatever your next level is. So one of the tricks of routing this is that we ensure that we get large bonuses from every palace to get all the experience we need without having to grind enemies.
Right. The way the experience works is kind of weird. Experience, you sort of spend it like currency. If you look in the top right corner, you see that next number. You see 24/100. 24 is the amount of experience that he has unspent right now. And every time you pass one of the thresholds, each magic, life, or attack level has a certain cost, a certain amount of experience that you have to spend on it to gain that level. What happens is when that dialogue pops up, you can choose anything that you are able to afford, but that dialogue will only pop up when your amount of experience you have, that number that's on the left, crosses one of the next experience point total boundaries. And that's what that number is on the right side, that 300. That's when the next time that dialogue box is going to pop up. But in this case, he needs to make sure he gets past 300 after this boss, before putting the crystal into the thing at the end of the palace, so that the next number will be as big as it possibly can be, and he'll get maximum bonus.
fight, good fight.
And there we go. Next is 2,000, so that means he's going to get almost 1,700 bonus when he throws this in here. So by doing this for every palace, he's not going to have to stop and grind, and he's going to be able to end the game with like 6, 7, 8 or something like that.
Big thanks to Silamando12 for a $510 donation. Says, fulfilling my promise. Thank you to all the runners and everyone watching and donating. You make all this possible, and you're amazing. Let's see if we can't shatter our goals this year. Thank you.
So the encounter luck around Palace 2 is a pretty big sticking point for any category of this game.
Right, there are some things you can do to manipulate it, but only so far you can go with that.
Every time,
Sorry, I was just going to say the main problem being that your speed is half on the swamp, and the encounters can easily catch up to you.
I was just saying, every time those overworld enemies clip you, it costs about 7 to 10 seconds. That adds up really quick over the course of the run. And finding little manipulations really helps, because most of the time, those wandering monsters will move according to their position relative to Link. And that was another place where those little blue bots are very well placed to kill you. Another 200-point bag just walked right past.
Don't need to rely on the drop there because of the free red jar.
To this point in the run, the only key we picked up was directly in the way. That's what getting the fairy spell did for us. We're skipping so many rooms in these palaces. That is the handy glove that allows us to break certain breakable blocks. It's required to get through about half of the palaces from here on out.
Right, yeah, it's one of the items that you can't skip regardless of what route you're taking.
Even in the most glitched out runs,
Which you will see in a bit. You're going to
you
need
still
that
have
glove.
to get the glove.
And you also got to see there one of the other advantages of the fairy spell. Besides going through the door, when he picked that item up, he just immediately grabbed it. He didn't have to hold it up in the air and play the little tune.
Nice.
When he pauses now and then, it's because every time you cast a spell, you have to re-pause in order to cast it again. So he's re-queuing up the spell to cast it. That's Palace 2 down.
And he should get another attack level from this. The idea is to get an attack level from each of these palaces, because the attack levels cost so much more than the other ones. But he's going to use all the palace bonuses for attack levels up to the next one. The next one won't be.
And this is going to be a slog over to Palace 3, so this will be a good time for some donations.
Sure, yeah. Let's see, we got a $150 donation from Clack Bardo, who says, "Hey guys, friend loves you guys a lot, so I thought about checking you guys out, and now I'm hooked. Keep up the awesome work. Screw cancer." Big shout out to Rooster Teeth Achievement Hunter and the No for the link and know of you guys streaming. Thank you. We got $20 from Spectral Unicorn, who says, "Zelda 2 is one of my favorite Zelda games, so it's very exciting to see it run at AGDQ. Putting this money towards what all true speedrunners want, kill the false god." And let me take a moment to just remind you that 100% of any money we get from Twitch subscriptions goes straight to the Prevent Cancer Foundation. So that's a good way of supporting it too.
So for this palace, he needs a red jar to drop at some point, and there's 4 chances. Got it on the first one.
He got it. There we go. That was a 50-50 chance, and you got it.
In terms of speed, P-Bag is preferable, but the sooner the red jar drops, the better.
Right. He has a shot right here at 1, but he got a knight instead.
Yeah. So the red jar was slightly slower, but a lot better for reliability.
Reliability, yeah.
Those drops are kind of meant to come at unpredictable times. Basically, they come from every 6th enemy you kill that can drop that drop. So basically, pretty much every kill in this run is scripted to ensure that those drops will come at just the right time to get just the right fill-up needed. It takes a lot of practice just to be able to complete one of these runs.
Right, and that's one of the interesting things about routing Zelda 2 is you're not just worried about fighting, you're also worried about counting, keeping track of how many large enemies and sometimes how many small enemies you've killed.
I hope that didn't go through the mic. Oops.
Neat. So there he cast Fairy and then got the level up, the magic level up, which refilled his magic. Good timing. You also got to see what we call the jackhammer move. Mashing down on the D-pad with down stab lets you attack those guys repeatedly. Do that in any of those low-ceilinged places.
Basically only casting jump in this room for safety, so that you can down stab the bots and not have to worry about them. You can spare the magic at this point in the palace.
And he looks like he's got enough experience. He needs to be over 400 or over 399 experience going into the boss. So he's close at 263. He'll make it.
JD15 donated $25. Said, "Wanted to donate to a Glitch Zelda 2, but it's already been met. Keep up the good work, guys."
And so here's a fun way to fight this boss.
this point, we're gonna get the 4,200 experience from placing the crystal and dump it all into magic and life levels.
Right, so instead of taking an attack level, as was done in the last two palaces, the idea is to just spend all that on magic, or as much as possible on magic, because once you get up to magic level 5, that will allow you to cast fairy twice with the amount of magic boxes that you have. So that's the reasoning for taking the magic levels right now.
Let me take a moment and remind you that if you did want to bid for the path taken in Fire Emblem, you need to get that in before that run, which is it's coming up in a couple games. Currently, Radiant Dawn is winning by 2,051 to the 1,052 of Path of Radiance.
So the overworld in this area in the game is pretty unpleasant.
Yeah, there's a long distance that you have to get between without having little safety points to reset the timer on these overworld enemies.
So you'll see him pause from time to time just to sort of decide which direction to walk. Gives himself a little more time to make that decision. So we are going to pick up the kid, which is sort of a quest item to get the reflect spell in the next town.
And the only reason to switch to fairy here is just so you don't have to do the pickup animation. Just skip that entirely.
So we're gonna, after we exit this bridge, we're gonna duck into the spiked square that gives you the one up. And once again, for safety, we're gonna take it. This serves two purposes. It lets you manipulate this next encounter, so that it's farther away from you, giving you more chance to dodge. And also makes the next encounter on the grass, which once again makes it farther away, easier to dodge.
Got it. So there's two encounters here that are fixed encounters. They're always there when you walk over them. But if you're able to trigger a random enemy on top of the square that has the fixed encounter, you'll get the random enemy instead. So he had bad luck there. The enemy came at him from behind. So he's just going to go in and do this fixed encounter.
And so as you can see, it's quite a bit longer than a normal random encounter. So in here, we're just going to be picking up the reflect spell. So
You can also get upstab here, but that is not needed in the any percent run. Don't need upstab.
So it would be a good time to...
Yeah, sir. We actually just got a $1,000 donation from Feather Touch. So that's awesome. Who said, Feather Touch here from the Bro Force, putting this towards naming Cloud Ferdy in FF7. I lost my grandfather to cancer, and watching him slowly slip away was one of the hardest things we've done. Thank you very much, Feather Touch. We got a $25 donation from Uzi Gorilla, who says, my first live GDQ, I have to donate, right? Good luck to all the runners. Thank you. Got a $20 donation from Omni Unknown, who says, meant for my first donation to be during Donkey Kong Country 2, but slept through it. You actually didn't sleep through it. It's been delayed. So here's $20 instead of $10 during Zelda 2. Remember, to everyone watching, speedrunners don't meet goals, we destroy them. Also, Save the Animals is winning? That can't be right.
we're not attempting to skip some of these longer encounters, even though they're longer, because you do need to pick up a little bit of extra experience before going into Palace 4. There needs to be a magic level up at a certain time in the palace in order to be able to cast Fairy enough times to get through it. And we did pick up the Reflect spell, so gonna just mention that we pick it up for exactly one reason, which is the boss of Palace 4.
Yeah, what Reflect does is it, for one thing, it lets you block fireballs, which is kind of a lesser used use of it. It'll also reflect back certain kinds of attacks, like the Wizrobes when they appear, you can reflect their attacks back, but mainly it lets you reflect Carrick, the boss of this dungeon, lets you reflect his attacks back at him, which is the only way to fight him, and that's the reason why it's required, even though it's so far out of the way. It's also a very expensive spell at this point. All the spells become less expensive as your magic level goes up, but this is still quite expensive.
Oh, good, I didn't miss the whole run. Sorry about that.
So this palace is unique in that instead of being basically a straight line, it branches off into two sides, the left side and the right side. The right side contains the boots, which lets you walk on water to access Palace 5, and in some categories it's faster to kill the boss and then come back and get the boots second. In some categories, I think it's even faster to get the boots
first,
before you get Reflect.
Yep.
Just depending on if you're using deaths or if you're using the up A, the game restart. Nice.
Cool. We should probably point out that up A, this category is no deaths, no up A. You can use intentional deaths to help you in a lot of ways. You can not just warp where you are, you can also use it to refill magic, and the up A, pressing up A on the second controller while the game is paused basically forces a game over. It's sort of like the suicide button in case you get stuck or something. But that ends up being very useful in a speedrun because you can use it to warp back to the starting palace at the beginning of the game, which saves you a lot of backtracking, gives you your lives back, etc. So that's actually a faster way to beat this game. So, yeah, and he got it. He needed that red potion. If he didn't have that, he would have had to either hope for another one or walk out to the outside of this palace and farm them.
Sometimes these guys are real jerks and don't come out of their little hidey holes. Oh. So even though he's got very low life, I don't think we'll be seeing him cast the life spell, just because he needs all this magic to be able to get through.
Killing exactly 2 of those gives enough experience to take Magic 6 right here. And since there are still 2 more doors to ferry through, that magic refill is critical.
Let me take a moment here to thank Tiny Build Games, which is one of our sponsors. Tiny Build Games is an indie developer morphed into an indie publisher. They partner up with indies across the world to help better their games, as well as develop games themselves. Check them out at tinybuild.com and check out their game Speedrunners, available in the AGDQ 2015 Humble Bundle.
Got a lucky drop there.
Yeah, he was fortunate to get a red jar. Gets his magic back for this boss.
Because this boss, there's no skill to it. You just have to reflect his shots and hope he dies before he kills you. And being down to 1 heart made that dicey.
Right. The first hit is free if you do it right, and the rest is all just roll the dice and.
Right, hope he doesn't appear on top of you before you kill him.
At this point, the experience routing is pretty easy. There are 3 palace gems left, and there will be 3 levels to take. At this point, it's just about staying alive and staying on the route.
You might notice that he's skipping a lot of heart containers. He just skipped one that's really easy to get to just a moment ago in the water, but you really don't need it, or at least don't need it enough to want to go out of your way to get it. There's only one heart container that's directly on your path that you'll see him get in this route.
And that is really only useful to get because it helps with an encounter skip. The encounter for the heart is much shorter than the monster encounters.
A quick thank you to N. Scott G for a $50 donation. Says, Zelda 2 was the only game I ever had to use Game Genie on when I was a kid. What you're doing is amazing. Keep it up, fellas.
Thanks to all those donations, because there's going to be a run coming up that's going to look like a Game Genie run.
$60 donation here from Erthine, who says, watching from the UK, great schedule lined up and some awesome runs so far. Money means less cancer.
Many of us as kids playing the game would stab every single statue in the game, hoping for those jars. Even as a speedrunner, you gotta know where they all are, because the guaranteed ones are very useful. I think Fiesel once said in a run, that's the furthest out of the way he's willing to go to get a key.
Right. I think that's the most, that's the most off path. This little detour down here is to get the item of this dungeon, which is the flute. It's just a sequence item. It lets you get to the next palace. That's about all it's for. By the way, this is intentional. He didn't just glitch through a wall. That's just there to trick you.
That enemy in front of an apparently blank wall was meant to be a clue that, hey, maybe there's something there. This is the most puzzle-oriented of the palaces, pretty much. Just finding everything is the hardest part.
So what he's doing right there is manipulating the blue guy to walk away from the door so that he can slip past him and get back out again without taking a hit. So he had to get the blue guy to walk back to the right.
Even at life 7, those guys can hurt.
We got a $50 donation from Wildfall, who asks, why did you schedule AGDQ on exam week, frowny face?
He's getting very good luck with these orange, these magos, these orange wizards that keep appearing. They're random, and they can appear right in front of you in ways that you just can't avoid getting hit, so very fortunate.
My least favorite way is when they appear right in front of you, so that as you bounce over them, they turn around and snipe you from behind. Oh, So Projan's just making this look easy.
Yeah, coming up in just a moment is one of the trickier bosses in this game, which he is going to make look easy.
Hopefully.
Of course he will. Of course he will.
Fun bit of trivia, that red hammer throwing guy is, in the Japanese version, called a guma, which is basically Japanese for bear. This boss is called Boss Guma. He's meant to be a large-sized version of those little red hammer throwers. And he's red and he has a hammer. A hammer that has an absolutely giant hitbox that can snipe you in very surprising distances.
Nice fights. So coming up here, he's going to be using the flute to get past this this river. Wait, what's this thing called?
River Demon.
The River Demon?
River
Devil?
Demon? River Devil? Okay.
One of the two.
And he ducks in there to reset the encounter timer, but what he's hoping to do is get one of these enemies on this square. Nope, didn't want to help. You can skip this encounter, and this saves a lot of time if you do that, but enemies weren't cooperating.
Nintendo's version of bullet hell right here on these encounters.
We got a $50 donation here from Ramseed, who says, 4 years ago, I lost my dad to lung cancer. I was 14 at the time. It was by far and away the hardest part of my life, and I know the pain that others have been through. You have my sympathy, and you are not alone. Cancer is a cruel disease and takes loved ones away from us before we can even say goodbye. Recently, we lost an amazing community member, Ferdy, only 23, and he had so much left to live for. But cancer took that away from him. With the money raised by AGDQ, we can prevent others from being taken from us. This donation is for my father and Ferdy. Thank you.
No, he wasn't going the wrong way there. Ducking onto that bridge again was to reset the encounter timers, because those forest encounters are slow to deal with.
Right, yeah. The trick is just to get no encounters in the overworld, and this is one of the hardest places to do that. You have to go through quite a distance, and the enemies spawn very close to you, because when you're in the forests, the enemies just spawn closer to you. That's just how it is.
Closer to you and more often.
And more often. So he was very lucky to, well, and he did some manipulation techniques, and combination of that let him get through that without an encounter.
So the only reason to come to this town in this run is to pick up the magic jar in this house.
Yeah, the final magic container. There's two other things here. There's the spell called Spell, which does various things. It's actually kind of useful for getting through Valley of Death, but he's not going to get it. He's going to skip it. He's also going to skip the magic key. Past this point in the game, they don't give you keys anymore. You need to pick up this magic key, but he's just going to do without it and rely on using the fairy spell to get through all the doors and manipulating his magic amounts so that he can do that.
Most speedrunners of this game would get the spell called Spell for a later part of the run. Skipping it increases the difficulty of the run by a great deal.
We've just reached $300,000 in donations just to GamesDoneQuick.com. Well done.
The hard skip. So he was going to that square to get this encounter to try to skip the other encounter, but unfortunately it worked the other way around.
And we're done with the flute for the run.
I want to remind you guys that GamesDoneQuick.com is not the only way to support the Prevent Cancer Foundation during this marathon. Games Done Quick has partnered with Humble Bundle, and so if you go to humblebundle.com, you can pay what you want for up to 9 games. Also a Twitch Turbo subscription, a subscription to XSplit Premium, and exclusive merchandise, all while supporting the Prevent Cancer Foundation. humblebundle.com.
Maybe? No.
The dungeon item of this level is the cross, which would let you see certain invisible ghosts. However, we don't have the candle, so even with the cross, we wouldn't be able to see them anyway, so there's no reason not to skip it in this run.
Also, back in that previous room there, what he was trying to do is get on top of the ceiling. If you fall off the bottom of the screen in a certain way, in a certain place, you can actually spawn on top of the ceiling in the next area, and that lets you skip that door, but didn't quite get it.
It saves a little time falling.
Yeah.
Experience set to 3950 out of 4000, which is perfect. You take a magic fill up right here. Because 2 more fairy casts are required. Good recovery. He tried to get out of the way. And now the boss of Palace 6, who in later Zelda games would be translated Volvagia, but in this one they translate it differently, and he's usually known as Barba.
All right, so let's see what this works here.
Still good, yeah. So the important thing to realize about that boss is that if you walk through the room without stopping for anything, like not to readjust or jump on that little platform, he will always appear in the right pit.
For the first cycle.
For the first cycle, which should be all you need if you're using that crazy strat that he used. So the last thing that it remains to get is the Thunder Spell. You need to have all of the magic containers in order to get this. That's the reason we collected those magic containers throughout. And the Thunder Spell, it can be used to attack enemies, but it's not really all that useful for that. Mainly you need it so that you can fight Thunderbird, the second last boss. It's just required to be able to hurt him.
And there's an invisible ghost in that town. You're meant to have the candle and the cross, and there are many of those ghosts coming up in the Valley of Death.
Thank you to the Mad Nad for a $50 donation. He just said, "I love AGDQ." That is all. Thanks for an anonymous $15 donation. They said, "I had leukemia when I was 5 years old. And during the treatments of chemotherapy and radiation, I played hours and hours of Donkey Kong Country in the hospital. I think what you're all doing is amazing, and God bless you all. Thank you."
So this is called the Valley of Death for a reason.
All right, he's using up all his, casting all the spells he can, because you get this magic jar here.
Basically, it just allows for one free cast of fairy.
That encounter is full of those invisible ghosts who can knock you into the lava.
Wow.
Nice.
So normally you would use either fairy or the jump spell or the spell or whatever, but he's just gonna commando his way through it. Nice. So there's fixed encounters. Ooh, there's fixed encounters all over the place, and he just skipped 2 of them by getting enemy encounters on top of them.
Here's the hardest room of the run.
All right.
Okay.
Later tonight, we're going to have the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, and there are still several unmet goals or bidding wars. There's going to be a bonus any % run. Currently have about $1,000 out of $3,000 for that. There's a bidding war for the character name and also for the race. And there's an that's just about met goal to kill the false god Vivek with a lockpick.
And he's in.
Well, the good news is we made it.
Bad news is there's a few obstacles on the way to the next fill-up. Every enemy in here is a souped-up version of the enemies in the rest of the game. They're tougher, they do more damage. Plus, the entire level's a giant maze.
Let me remind you, in case you have some schedule confusion, that Donkey Kong Country 2 run has been delayed because Krauser the runner is not here yet. I think his plane has arrived, but I'm not sure. So right now we have The Legend of Zelda 2, and after this we're going to have a glitched run of this game, and then we're going to have The Legend of Zelda, the original.
Also the only Zelda game that's not The Legend of Zelda. It's just Zelda 2.
Well, my mistake, sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
The funnest fact of all. So those, good attempt. Those red bird knights can do one of like 5 or 6 things.
And that's the worst thing
That's
you
the
can do.
worst thing it can do, is jump towards you immediately.
And of course, the blue slime to jump right in your face right there, adding insult to injury.
We got an $80 anonymous donation who just said, "Your work is epic, keep it up."
So had there not been a death, this would be the place where he would have gotten a red jar to refill his magic at that statue back there. So we were very close to that. Almost made it. Nice.
We got a $200 donation from Chair RXN, who says, "Thanks for all the hard work by the runners and the organizers. What a great cause. Oganam Dark Souls 2 run hype." Hype.
Again.
Another bad pattern.
And a bad beam pattern.
Here's a $20 donation from the Black Cat, who says, "Holy crap, Zelda? Here, have $20. Well, thank you.
Okay, so he's hoping for a red potion drop out of this, and he gets it. You need your magic refill to be able to cast Thunder in order to harm Thunderbird. This is the end of the game.
At Magic 7, it uses most of your magic. Casting Jump to fight this guy is faster
nice.
but riskier.
So that was the real final boss. This is not nearly as challenging as that, but it can go wrong. This guy can behave a little randomly. See what happens.
Get ready for time. Time.
What?
Oh, yeah.
Sub-hour.
Sub-hour.
Yeah, excellent. Nice job.
So that was what Zelda 2 looks like, normally.
Relatively normally.
Yeah, if you're very good at it. Very, very good at it. And the glitched donation incentive was met, so I'm going to show you what it looks like
Thank you, everyone,
way
for
less
that.
normally.
You want to share?
Yeah, I'll take the chair. You want to be my player too?
That was ProJN on Zelda 2. What a great run. Thank you.